Hello, and welcome to an overview of the Infrastructure Program, a part of the Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Revitalization Program, otherwise known as PIER, a part of the ReOregon effort. Today, we'd like to speak with you about the background and design of the Infrastructure Program with PIER, how to apply, eligible activities under the program, and we'd also like to introduce core program resources. We have a HUD-approved action plan, and allocations have been set aside for the counties. The counties are currently reviewing projects and recommending certain projects to OHCS. If OHCS approves the project, an award will be made to the subrecipient, followed by implementation of the project. These funds are a part of a $422 million CDBG-DR recovery effort in response to the 2020 Labor Day fires and will be administered by OHCS. In addition to the PIER program, the funds will also be used for a homeowner and renter assistance program, among other programs. These efforts, together called ReOregon, will rebuild and create new housing, infrastructure, assist with economic revitalization, and assist communities impacted by the fires create plans. You can view the full action plan on the ReOregon website, linked on this deck. The action plan describes how the state will spend the allocation to support recovery in 8 counties impacted by the fires. As a part of this action plan, Oregon has defined the PIER program, which will provide $42 million for planning, economic revitalization, and infrastructure projects. These projects must meet certain requirements. Projects must be timely and follow a clear schedule that shows project completion before February 2028. Each project must have a minimum budget of $500,000. Each project must tie directly back to the recovery from the disaster event or mitigate against future risks. And each project must be eligible under CDBG-DR rules. Each of the 8 counties has been allocated funds under PIER. You can see the allocation amount for each county on the left side of the screen. Those counties have created or will create regional selection committees to select and recommend projects to OHCS for approval and funding. Remember, the minimum budget that will be approved is $500,000. If you would like to apply to PIER and you are in Lane, Jackson, Douglas, or Klamath County, you should visit their websites. They're linked in the slide deck. These websites will describe those counties' local processes of application. To learn more about Lincoln, Lynn, and Marion, or if you're just unsure who to reach out to or have questions, you could reach out to PIER at hcs.oregon.gov to request assistance. Who will be reviewing your project? These selection committees are made of voting members from local government, economic district representatives, long-term recovery groups, tribes, or other organizations that have a vested interest in the county's recovery. These committees will receive and review your project, then vote to decide to move the project before OHCS. You may be wondering who can apply for these funds. Tribes, state agencies, counties, municipal governments, districts, authorities, and any other public or quasi-public entity, such as a COG, can apply for these funds. As a part of the application process, a project description form will be required by OHCS. Now, there's a separate form for each type of project eligible under PIER: planning, economic revitalization, and infrastructure, which we're talking about today. Please note that this slide deck has a link to each form. The form will require detailed information about the project, such as the budget and how the project meets the required eligibility criteria. While some selection committees may allow an approved alternative document during selection, this form will be required by OHCS when submitting the project to the state. What types of infrastructure programs are eligible? You can repair, replace, or relocate damaged facilities, or build new public facilities. These facilities could include, but are definitely not limited to, infrastructure projects such as water, wastewater, emergency communication systems, drainage improvements, or other project types that address specific current or projected current hazards. These funds can also be used for FEMA public assistance or hazard mitigation grant program matching funds. Now, no matter what type of infrastructure project you apply for, keep in mind that project activities must either tie back to the disaster or mitigate against future disasters. Direct tieback includes recovery needs directly resulting from the 2020 Labor Day fires that support new housing or replacement housing. You can read this language broadly. It includes economic revitalization, creation of public facilities and infrastructure, to the extent that local partners determine that the project will be important to supporting housing. Mitigation activities must reduce the expected loss of life and property in the face of identified natural hazards. This could be fire hardening a public facility or other infrastructure projects that clearly result in increased resilience to future disasters. Please note that CDBG-DR funds cannot be used for certain activities. Common and eligible activities include work on buildings that are for the conduct of government, such as city halls or courthouses. One key exception to this is what is called the removal of architectural barriers for ADA compliance. A common example of this would be ramp installation. Now, any equipment that is not an integral part of a public facility will also not be funded. What do we mean by integral? Think on items like permanently installed backup generators for radio towers or a SCADA system for a wastewater treatment plant. These funds cannot be used for operation and maintenance, otherwise known as O&M. A good example of maintenance that would not be allowed would be filling in potholes rather than completing a full reconstruction of a street. General capacity development is also not allowed without disaster tieback, and any assistance to privately owned for-profit utilities that do not meet HUD's guidance, linked in the slide, cannot be funded. Every project in PIER additionally must meet one of two HUD national objectives. Projects can either primarily benefit low to moderate income people or address an urgent need. If you are planning on using the low moderate income area benefit objective, you should keep in mind the following. First, the serviced area must be clearly defined on a map. Then your project must benefit every resident in that defined service area. So, for example, if you are replacing a fire damaged lift station for a sewer line, then your map should include every person on that sewer line that will receive benefit from the lift station installation. Please keep in mind that the service area must be primarily residential. Finally, last, but certainly not least, at least 51% of the people in the service area must be low to moderate income. Now, how do you prove the income of the beneficiaries in your service area? Door-to-door income surveys may be appropriate for projects whose boundaries do not map cleanly to a predefined municipal or census tract boundary. If the service area does map cleanly, everyone in a census tract or other boundary with existing data will receive benefit. You could use LMISD data. You can learn more about door-to-door surveys and find LMISD data via the links in this slide. Now, if you're not going to meet an LMI benefit, you could potentially address an urgent need. Urgent need projects do not need to meet the 51% LMI threshold if they can show that they respond to an urgent need. You will need to provide detail on the specific need, why it's an urgent need, and how the existing conditions pose a serious and immediate threat to the health and safety of the community in which the project takes place. Now, it's important to note that even with the urgent need objective, you don't need 51% LMI, but you do need to define the service area on the map, serve everyone in that area, and provide the characteristics of the beneficiaries. As such, income surveys or LMISD data will still be required. Infrastructure projects using CDBG funds have to adhere to Title 44 in the CFR, otherwise known as critical actions. Critical actions are defined as any activity for which even the slight chance of flooding is too great. This includes activities in the 100 and 500-year floodplains, such as structures which produce, use, store flammable, explosive, toxics, or water reactive materials, such as a wastewater treatment plant. Hospitals, nursing homes, or other facilities whose occupants may not be mobile enough to avoid loss of life or injury during flood events. emergency operation centers, data storage centers, generating plants, or principal points in a utility infrastructure. These types of activities will need to be elevated or otherwise flood-proofed. Now, depending on where your project is, there are specific elevation requirements in play. If you are in a 500-year floodplain, your critical action requirements will look different than the 100-year floodplain, specifically in terms of how much you need to elevate the facility. So when you're creating your project, make sure you're situating your project and your floodplain maps correctly to ensure that you're addressing the correct elevation requirements. Keep in mind that elevation and floodproofing could impact your budget needs. In addition to critical action requirements in floodplains, keep in mind that all newly constructed infrastructure must incorporate resilient design to withstand extreme weather events. This will help extend infrastructure longevity and minimize the need to pay for replacements in other disaster events. Your engineer should incorporate and certify the inclusion of mitigation and resilient design standards that either reduce or totally eliminate long-term risk. Now, if your project is selected by the committee, you will meet with OHCS to review the project before submitting the official project description form to OHCS. This meeting is to verify the project scope, discuss meeting national objective criteria, review the budget, review your associated materials, review the application, and program expectations. We'll also provide time for Q&A. This meeting is to assist you and to minimize the need for requests for information in the application process. We're almost to the end, and it's time to check your knowledge. I'll read each sentence out loud and pause for you to have time to consider whether the statement is true or false. All right. The following must be met when utilizing the LMI area national objective, true or false. The service area must be defined on a map. The project services must be available to all residents in the defined service area. The service area must be primarily residential, and at least 51% of the residents must be defined as low and moderate income. If you thought that each of these items is required for the LMI objective, you are absolutely correct. All 4 criteria must be met when using the LMI objective. Before we end today, we wanted to make sure you know where to find key resources. Please visit the OHCS ReOregon website for general information on the recovery effort. It's linked in this slide. On that same website, and also directly linked here, is PIER-specific information like the policy, very important to read before you create your projects, and the required forms. If you have questions, please reach out to PIER@hcs.oregon.gov or directly to Julie. Her address is on this slide. Thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck with your infrastructure project.